your splendor, just to behold you in beauty forever.
Welcome to the Open Bible Podcast. My name is Jeremy Kaliba, and I am the lead pastor at Church of the Open Bible in Ponoka, Alberta. And this is a podcast for your edification, and we've enjoyed the opportunity to serve and learn alongside you as we've been working through James. We have a couple of things in the works regarding this podcast that Ethan and I have been planning, and one of them is the possibility of doing a Q&A episode where you send your questions in and we attempt to respond to them. There's a link in the description of the podcast where you can send your questions, and if or when we get enough, we'll take an episode to answer them. In 2012, I led a youth missions trip to Manitoba. We had around a dozen high school students, and we served a native Bible camp near Dauphin for a week, and then we did a week of inner city ministry in downtown Winnipeg. And it was a great trip. And one of the unique things about a trip like that is how close you become as a group, how close you become as a team. Maybe you've experienced that before, being closely knit to others through shared experience, through eating together, living together, serving, and laughing together. Well, during our debriefing time at the end of the trip, I remember trying to impress upon the students that things are going to change, that pretty soon this experience will fade, but what God has done will last. And so I told them, I remember telling them that 5 years from now, they'd all be graduated and that probably none of us will see each other, or at least most of us will not be close friends. And you should have seen their faces, the shock. In that moment, these were their closest people. How could I ever think that we would not be close in the future? How dare you think that? But you know what? It came true. You know, life has taken us in different directions. Oh, I'm sure most of us are still Facebook friends, but it's not like what we experienced on that trip. It can be especially difficult for us when we're younger to consider the brevity and unpredictability of life. We live as if we're in control and that this life will go on forever. And this is a more subtle pride, but it's pride nonetheless. And this is what James turns his attention to in James chapter 4, beginning in verse 13. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. Earlier in the chapter, James talked about the pride of speaking evil of one another. But here he talks about the pride of planning apart from God. They were talking about all their travel plans, all their business plans, all their plans, as if they were in charge of their lives. But life is not like that, James says. Life is unpredictable, and life is brief. You know, it sounds like James has studied Ecclesiastes, right? Life is a vapor. It's a wisp. So what is the corrective James offers? Well, he says, stop acting like you're in control. Verse 15 reads, instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. It's not necessarily that we need to say those words, though our prayers could use a heavier dose of them. Rather, do we keep in mind that God is in control? That there are more important and longer lasting things than our plans. Our lives are not the main event. Eternity is. Only proud fools live like this life is all that there is. I love how James ends this challenge. It's incredibly practical. If there's more than this life, then we need to live like it. We need to live in a way that acknowledges who God is and the things that truly matter. Just because our lives are brief doesn't mean they're meaningless. Instead, they have more meaning when we consider eternity. So how do you consider God when it comes to your plans? How do you consider eternity when it comes to the decisions you face each day? 5 years from now, this podcast will not matter, probably much sooner than that. 5 years from now, many of the things we are concerned with now will seem small and insignificant. But 5 years from now, God's grace today will be even more evident, and our faithfulness today will bear fruit as we trust Him. May we humbly recognize that our lives and plans are up in the air, while our salvation and security are firmly established in Christ. Again, thank you for joining me today with another edition of the Open Bible Podcast. Our intro music today was Be Like You by Jonathan Ogden, and our closing music today is The Autumn Song by Sarah Sparks.
Leaves are falling now in glorious gold and orange red. As pretty as they are, they're changing colors, marks their death. I see a lot of beauty, but it's a terrifying view if this is it. It's the changing of the seasons that makes me able to acknowledge it. I could hold a funeral every morning now to grieve. With this empty womb, I know that death has marked all things. I am getting older, and the longer I'm alive, the more I know death has got a hold here, and it's showing in my skin, in blood and bones. As I see the leaves all falling, I'll remember I am getting just a taste, both of death and beauty, what I deserve and get instead in place. Cares upon the one who took